A new round of tariffs has hit companies and consumers on both sides of the Pacific. On Sunday, the US imposed 15% taxes on more than $125 billion in Chinese imports. Beijing retaliated by targeting $75 billion in American goods, including crude oil for the first time.
China is moving along. We're doing very well. It was brought out very strongly today by a number of great economists that because China has devalued their currency so much that in fact they are actually paying for all of the tariffs. We have, in addition to that, as you know, they're pouring money into their economy.
The US levies are in addition to the 25% tariffs it imposed on $250 billion of Chinese goods. Those taxes mainly targeted industrial goods and will go up to 30% next month. This time, most textiles and about half of shoes imported from China will be taxed. While US President Donald Trump insists China is paying the tariffs, researchers say it's US businesses and consumers.
When the tariffs take effect on September 1st, it's going to mean the biggest tax increase that we've seen on clothing and shoes and home textiles in a generation, if not longer.
Consumer spending makes up about 75% of the US economy. But last month saw the sharpest monthly decline in consumer sentiment in nearly 7 years. And economic growth in the second quarter slowed to 2%, down from 3.1% in the first quarter. Trump says it's not his trade policies, but the Federal Reserve that's harming the economy by allowing a strong dollar that's less competitive. But even with trade talks underway, both countries have more tariffs scheduled for December.
We are talking to China. The meeting is still on, as you know, in September. That hasn't changed. They haven't changed it. We haven't. We'll see what happens. But we can't allow China to rip us off anymore as a country.
American businesses and consumers can now only hope that more than a year into the US-China trade war, negotiations will make some progress. Sibel Karkus, TRT World.
Samantha Vadas sent us this update from Beijing.
Well, these new tariffs mark a dramatic escalation in what has been a bruising trade war between the pair. Both sides are expected to meet sometime this month to resume talks over a deal, but hopes for a resolution are wearing thin. US President Donald Trump has been sending mixed messages on negotiations with China, which has created more uncertainty. He's also linked them with the Hong Kong protests, saying he believes the talks had led Beijing to be more restrained in its response to the unrest. Now, while the new duties were slapped on each other's goods yesterday, more are expected to kick in on December the 15th. The US has targeted things like footwear, clothes, Bluetooth speakers and TVs. Now, that's bad news for US shoppers and retailers, particularly in the lead up to Christmas, as some reckon the tariffs could cost American households $1,000 a year. Now, Trump says his goal is to reduce reliance on China and has urged American companies to find alternate suppliers outside the country. But US manufacturers we've spoken to say it's taken decades to set up supply chains here, and so simply setting up shop elsewhere is not easy.
And for more on this now, Jeffrey Tucker joins me from Great Barrington, Massachusetts. He's the editorial director of the American Institute of Economic Research. Jeffrey, China is targeting US oil with levies this time around. How much is that going to hurt the United States?
Well, everything is going to hurt. This continued escalation is really a disaster. You notice this taking place on Labor Day weekend, so we haven't heard the financial markets yet speak about this. But, you know, many people have been in denial about what Trump has intended to do for about a year and a half, but there's been a real wait-and-see attitude. You can look and see, after 10 years of increase in the Dow Jones Industrial Average and in the S&P 500, after 10 years of increase, it's been flattened out ever since this trade war began. And I think the reality is going to start dawning on many American traders and manufacturers that this is a new permanent situation as long as Donald Trump is in office. It's a little perverse to say this, but I think Trump is getting exactly what he wants. He thinks, as he's said in this clip that you ran, that a trade deficit is the same thing as China taking money out of the U.S. So he wants tariffs to equal as high as $500 billion, That's his goal. And I don't know what kind of reality is going to persuade him otherwise. It's getting really grim out there.
Another thing that the president has said is that these tariffs are designed to hurt China and they're hurting China and China's paying for everything. But is that in fact the case? Is it now average middle Americans who are paying for this now?
Yes, of course, you're exactly right. It is 100% Americans that are paying. The cause of free trade has always been a cause for the poor and the middle class because there really are taxes. Ever since the early 19th century, with the controversy over the poor laws in Britain, we've known that protectionism helps the elites and hurts the middle classes and the poor. In this case, protectionism is not even helping the elites. It's just universal taxes on everyone in America, and it's really harming. You're starting to see the damage take place in the macroeconomic environment. The spending among the wealthy is going down, durable goods falling, investment is falling, financials are weak. I don't know what else can really happen. What's interesting to me about this tariffs that Trump has been pushing is they're not being supported by the American business class. I mean, they're hurting the fisheries, the farmers, the tech industry, cars, even energy. And this next round is really going to hurt energy. So this is really one man's war against the global market. And now he's talking about decoupling U.S. and China. This is extreme radical talk that would have been unthinkable something like 3 years ago. You never would have heard anything like this.
Okay, let's cast our eyes a little bit further afield. China's economic performance really affects so many other countries that are closely tied to it around the world. How will the latest tariffs on China have a flow-on impact? Give me a brief overview. We're running out of time.
Okay. This is a very important question, and the answer is ultimately we don't know because the uncertainties unleashed by this kind of level of interruption of global trade are unpredictable. That's historically been true. However, we're already starting to see the consequences affect Germany and Canada, and if this becomes a contagion, I don't even want to talk about what the results could be, but it could be very, very bad.
Dire predictions. Jeffrey Tucker, thank you. I don't know whether to thank you, but thank you for your time. Anyway, Jeffrey Tucker joining us there from Massachusetts.